IT team for getting us up and running. All of you that were involved, I can tell you that they said you all look really, really good, even though they couldn't hear you. And so hopefully that has been remedied. Now, Larry Dane, I saw your department. Okay. Update on reclaimed water issues with our discharge permit renewal. Mr. Dane?
Good morning, Board. This is Chris Edelman with Arcadis. He's a consultant that's worked on our permit with us during this process. As you're aware that every 5 years we have to renew our discharge permit for Parham Landing plant. And a big part of that permit is our reclaimed water management plan and doing reclaimed water to our customers. DEQ came out with new guidance documents in 2018, and as part of that, DEQ has requested more conditions in our permit. Three big things that DEQ wanted was an increase in total suspended solids, which at the plant as a testing measure. We successfully pointed out that we've been in compliance for 10 years on this and didn't feel it was necessary, and after some discussion, DEQ agreed, and so they removed that. But the rest on the reclaimed is where the cost is now coming into play. They want increased COBD testing from 1 day a week for 3 days a week when we're sending reclaim to the golf courses in Colonial Downs. They pointed out that they had omitted to put that in the last permit and that it was part of the regulation so that they couldn't give us any kind of waiver on that. And after some discussion and doing some reading, we figured that's probably true. We got away with it for 5 years, so we're going to have to do it. It's probably going to cost us about an additional $5,000, but we feel we can cover it in our budget. The biggest part, though, was the rewrite of the Reclaimed Water Management Plan, and this is where I have some real issues with it. In 2017, we did this when we added West Rock. We paid Chris's firm $75,000 to prepare this and to do all the engineering to make it work so we could provide West Rock with reclaimed water. And this was a big part of that plan. As you can see, that's not quite 3 years old. DEQ came out with guidance documents in 2018, 250 pages of guidance document. And I challenge our attorney to read this and understand it, because I can't. I'll be frank. We've had people with Arcadis read this, and they've come back with some of the things that they say that we've already in the plan. DEQ says it isn't, so we don't know where we're going with this. But I told DEQ as of last week that if we couldn't come to an agreement, I would have to ask the board, do we want to continue doing reclaimed water to the end users at the 2 golf courses in Colonial Downs, or possibly spend $30, $40, maybe $50,000 that was not budgeted to get in compliance with what they feel we need to do. At the end of that discussion, they agreed that we could just put an amendment to this plan. Mm-hmm. We think we can do that amendment in-house, and Chris, sorry, but you won't get any money for this. Mm-hmm. But some of the stuff they said afterwards, we're looking at it, and again, we're going back to the same thing. We have this stuff in this agreement. They say it doesn't quite meet their standards, so that's still out there. The biggest part of that is they want updated contracts, generic contract, and even though we included the actual contract with West Rock in here, their claim was, well, it's not a generic contract, and we really couldn't really look into that. But it was approved by the Attorney General's office. Well, we still need to look at it, so we want a generic contract in this as part of that addendum, and they want a service agreement. And when you look at the language for a service agreement, it reads as the same as a contract. So I haven't figured out what that is either yet. But anyway, we are pushing forward with that. If we can't come to an agreement on the addendum, we have a decision to make. Do we want to pay our consultants, anywhere from $30,000, maybe $40,000, maybe more? I'm not sure, because again, he hasn't put together an estimate because, we're not sure of the scope of the work. Do we want to pay them that so we can keep sending reclaim to these 3 end users, or do we want to shut that off and shut that system down? At this point, I couldn't tell you what to do. I don't want to end the use at the 3 end users, but to be totally frank, over the course of the 10 years we've had it, I think Brickshire Golf Course has taken reclaim maybe 3 times, and Royal Newt Kent maybe once or twice. Colonial Downs, up until they closed, were taking it regularly. They are just this week, we started sending it back to Colonial Downs. So it's a lot of expense for not a lot of use. And that's where I have a concern. And I know the board doesn't want to spend money. I don't want to spend money. Mr. Steers reminds me constantly to try and we do to save money. And we do. And so this is one of those things that I feel we need to basically have to let the board know where we're going. And if possible, we may have to make a decision on this. We don't have to do anything today because we still are negotiating with DEQ. And I explained to DEQ that I would be here today and put this before the board, that might be an option that you may want to take if you don't want to expend the further monies without seeing a return from customers. So that's where I'm at today. Just wanted to update you on this. I'm not asking you to make any decisions today. As I said, Chris and I have, and of course Harold Jones that works for us, the three of us have been on conference calls, email chains. This thing has been flying since how long, Chris?
We submitted the application in May. We've been receiving draft permits since then.
So we're going on 3 months of doing this, and it's been essentially on the reclaim. That's where all the issues have. I told you about the one issue on the actual permit for suspended solids. That didn't take anything. DEQ says, yeah, you're right. We can go ahead and do that. And we actually got some lower toxicity testing in our permits, so we don't have to do that. We were doing that the first 2 years, every quarter, and they just dropped it down to once a year. So that also helped. And with the plant, they were able to do it, no problem. But the reclaim, they're just, for whatever reason, and I don't understand it, they are really holding tight on this one, and I assume it's because of this guidance documents. I just wanted to let you know that this is what's going on. I am still. I've got a few other cards I'm going to try and play if it doesn't get to what I feel is comfortable for the county, and I will do that again. But I wanted to let you all know where we're at with this. I don't want to take up too much of your time this morning, but I felt it was important that we're at the last minute on the negotiations with DEQ, that you all be aware of what may come out of this. Oh, I also want to tell you one thing. When we're sending it to the golf courses, it's costing us about 90 cents per thousand. We're making 82 cents per thousand. So we lose money.
What about West Rock?
West Rock, we make money because it's right down the road, and they have a contract where they pay us every month regardless whether they use it or not. So the golf courses and all that, because they're seasonal and it's all rain dependent, it wasn't feasible for them, and frankly, we didn't push it.
Do we have a contractual obligation with West Rock to continue that?
Yes, we do have that, and we will continue that. This won't affect West Rock. It just affects the 3 end users. West Rock they got 2 levels of reclaim. One of them is level 1, level 2. Level 1 is where the issue is. That's the one where there's possible human contact. With the golf courses, they put it in the lake, they spray it on the grounds. And at the Colonial Downs, they spray it on the grass track, and they also use it to irrigate the grounds around there. That's level 1. Level 2 is considered where there's very limited chance of human contact. They spray it on logs at the wet yard, and they take it over to the paper mill. There's very little chance of human contact in that, so the DEQ has declared that as level 2 reclaim. Any further questions?
Ms. Evelyn?
4 or 5 years ago, was it profitable then, or is it just turned to?
Well, it goes up. The cost for our testing goes up. It was never really profitable per se, but we were at least breaking even when we were sending it. But again, its cost goes up. Plus, there's an additional $5,000 now a year that we have to pay on additional testing, which we got away with, and I agree with. We should do it now because it is in the regs. But again, the service to provide the golf courses and the racetrack makes sense. And if the racetrack continues to use it, then it could become profitable again. But if it's not, that's a decision that y'all will have to make. I would, I don't know. At this point, I really don't want to say anything more than that.
Well, Mr. Dane, you're the expert here. And so you have a whole deck of cards.
I will use them.
And so we're relying on you to use those decks of cards so that we can continue to service the golf courses and Colonial Downs and all of that. So just keep us updated, sir.
I will.
Thank you
And
so much.
I would like to say that I do think this is a good program. I do think it does. It does reduce nutrients in the bay. It's a good green project for the county. It makes the county overall look good that we are trying to do this to be a green county. But at some point, I'm like Mr. Evelyn. I'm a dollars guy. I'm a money guy, and I don't like losing money.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Could you talk to maybe Colonial Downs and pull that card? They know,
Yes.
or would you need somebody else to do that
Well,
for you?
I've got some other contacts, but right now, the negotiations some of the people that we were talking with at DEQ seem to understand the situation, and I think they're trying to make this happen. I don't want to step on their toes as long as they're still working with us.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure until such point, and if it gets to that, then there's a few other people I'm going to call. But at this point, I just want to keep where we're at.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you, ladies
sir.
and gentlemen.
All right. And thank you, Chris, for being here. Our fourth item on our agenda is establishment of lifetime dog license. Mr. Hathaway?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm also going to ask our Mr. Evelyn if he would come forward, our treasurer.
Don't you say it.
Yeah. About a little over a month ago, you received an email from Mr. Evelyn requesting, I guess, authority to move forward with establishing a lifetime dog license. And I've been working with the treasurer and putting together an ordinance that would allow us to do that. And you have that ordinance before you. What it does is it does establish a lifetime dog license that would be required when your dog reaches 4 months old. In fact, the license would be required to be purchased within 30 days of your dog within 30 days of the dog reaching an age of 4 months. Or if you purchase a dog that is 4 months old or older, 30 days from the date of purchase. We've established a fee of $15, which is negotiable, and definitely we'd like to receive some input from you on that. It's a little higher than what some of our neighboring communities that currently offer lifetime license is offering. I believe Hanover is 10, and Dinwiddie, I believe, is also 10 as well. But 15 is within the limits of the state code. We've discussed this before, probably about a year ago, or maybe a little bit longer. And at the time, I voiced concerns about our ability to ensure that pets were receiving its rabies shot, because that was used as a way to track it. But I believe that our treasurer has come up with a good way of doing that while implementing the lifetime license by utilizing reports that he receives from the veterinarians once pets receive their vaccinations. And if you'd like to add anything.
Yeah, thank you, Rodney. The way the law is written, any vet in the state that vaccinates a dog, if he's the owner lives in New Kent County, they have to send my office a record of that vaccination. That shows the current expiration date, the owner's address. That goes into a database, and we can actually see every dog who has a rabies vaccination in the county. Some of that information, if the owners don't have a county license, we'll send that over to the sheriff's office. For the most part, that just sits in the database for us to see who has a rabies vaccination and who doesn't. Like Rodney said, in 2017, the state gave counties authority to implement a lifetime license. Because the vets were sending these reports to the counties, the localities, so we have a way to track those. That was the main purpose of the annual dog license, and it's really no longer needed.
So what happens if they don't get the annual rabies shots and all of that?
Most of them are 3 years, 3-year vaccinations.
Okay.
If they don't get the vaccination, then the county tag is null and void
Okay.
until that vaccination is current.
Okay.
And it's a
So if
class
it's
4
null and void, that
misdemeanor.
means they have to come back and pay the additional amount over?
That's not the way this draft ordinance is written now.
Okay.
But it is a class 4 misdemeanor to not have a vaccinated dog and not have the proper licensing as well.
We have any other questions or discussions on this?
I think it's a good idea, Ms. Page. It'll eliminate a whole lot of, I would imagine, paperwork on your end.
On mine and also on the dog owner's end, they don't have to worry about getting this every year.
Yep.
So-
Well, my 2 dogs will go along with it.
Okay. It's stated that it was for discussion only, so we thank you to our treasurer and Mr. Hathaway for looking into this for us.
Thank you. And we will proceed with the public hearing at the August regular meeting to amend the code to implement this.
Okay. Thank you.
If y'all have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Ms.
Thanks,
Evelyn. Item 5, our FEMA preliminary flood maps. Our status update, Mr. Starger.
Good morning. As you are all well aware, we recently sent out the notification maps, or notification letters, excuse me, regarding the updates to FEMA flood maps. We are post the notification, but we're still pre the 90-day appeals and comment period, which is the formal period when citizens can make appeals or comments to the county. FEMA has not set that date yet. We're just kind of in the limbo period waiting for them to notify us when that period will start. I did want to address a couple common questions or inquiries we're getting from citizens, as I imagine you all may be receiving the same. The top 3 we're getting, which I've included in your packet here, number 1, they own property in other localities. Why is New Kent the only one doing the updates per FEMA? Right now, we're not the only locality. On the second page, included in your handout, you'll see a couple adjacent localities there. Eventually FEMA will be doing the whole state. They're in their first or second phase, I believe. The purple counties you see highlighted there are the ones that have preliminary data released. We have Charles City, King and Queen, Gloucester, are ones adjacent to us that have preliminary data available. I'm not exactly sure where every specific locality is in the process. All this map represents is that FEMA has released preliminary new maps for these localities. The second question we're getting is when did the flood maps last get updated and why didn't I get notified? The last updates occurred in 2015. I'm not sure what the rollout looked like at that time, but all but 5 panels in the county were updated at that time. We only have 5 here left that are from 2009. You can see on the map there the grid pattern you see. Those are panels related to the panel numbers in the county. The board adopted those revised maps in 2015, as well as the establishment of Chapter 18, the floodplain district ordinance, which pulled the floodplain requirements out of the zoning ordinance, which was where it was housed previously. The third question we're getting, obviously in some iteration, the map shows the floodplain at my back door. If the water gets this high, then Richmond or Williamsburg will be underwater to some effect like that. On the second page, you'll see a plan view, which is what the map shows. We've been helping citizens, getting them educated on the difference between plan view and profile view. Your flood elevations are strictly that, based on elevation. With aerial views, plan views, you don't see elevation. If you flip your sheet over, you'll see a profile view of how that entails when you apply elevation to that. A lot of these homes that are adjacent to the water, up on bluffs or drop-offs, based on plan view, it looks like they're right next to the floodplain. But once you throw in the elevation, they could be 20, 25 feet above that elevation. But the property extends down to that low tide mark. So that's where we're seeing some discrepancies and just some clarifications. Those are the top 3 that we're seeing. If there's any other questions board members are getting, I'd be happy to address those.
I have a question. So, when we talk about floodplains and properties that are on, especially the Pamunkey, I have quite a large area, and so how is that affected?
I mean, all the maps are going through revisions. Pamunkey, all our tidal waters are based on elevation. And you really see that with the plan view and the profile view. A lot of those are up on the bluffs. But the property extends down to that low tide. So you're hitting that low tide mark, but the elevation rises above. But I mean, I'm not exactly sure how it's different than anywhere else in the county. It's tied to an elevation. If the house or property sits below that elevation, it's encumbered by the floodplain. If it's above it,
So when we say property, does that include piers?
yes, but those are permitted separately. Piers aren't applicable to this development standard.
Okay, and the Chickahominy?
It's the same.
And so this affects people's insurance, homeowners, flood insurance?
Only if their primary structure, the house, is included in the floodplain boundary. If it's on the parcel, there's no effect.
Madam Chair. So it's my understanding this information comes from somebody sitting up in DC. And
Correct. This is rolled out through FEMA through the locality.
And all they do is pick an arbitrary line. And I mean, why should somebody be getting getting letters that are going into the floodplain when the property might be down in it, but their house is 50 feet up above it. And then
the letter we pushed out is for information purposes. We wanted to reach out to every property owner that the floodplain touched a portion of their property, the parcel itself, whether it was 5 square feet or the entire parcel is encumbered. We wanted to get public educated, let them know where it's at on their property in case there's any future development plans, things along that line. It doesn't say that their home is included in the floodplain. The structure is. It says at a minimum a portion of their parcel is encumbered by the special flood hazard area.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
So if people's homes are not actually in this floodplain, then there's no requirement for additional insurance or anything like that.
Correct.
It's only if
If the
their house
structure
is
itself.
underwater.
Yes.
Okay. So
And if they have a federally backed mortgage, everything's paid for, clean and clear. There's no requirement. There's no
okay.
FEMA can't require that. It's only through the federally backed mortgage companies that can require that limitation.
Do these floodplain maps, do they show, does that impact the land that they're able to develop? I mean, obviously you don't want to build on something that might be underwater one day, but
Correct.
does that impact their RPAs and, all the,
RPA, not so much, but it does. If you were to build a house, a parking lot, a commercial structure, whatever you have you, inside that flood hazard boundary, there are special development requirements, flood proofing, elevation certificates, a whole slew of things that go into play if you were to place a structure within that boundary, yes.
So if we're going to build a marina, that would be affected.
It would have to go through the development requirements and comply with the elevation certificates and things like that. If they wanted to put it below elevation, there'd be flood proofing. There's many ways they can mitigate it, but it doesn't prohibit any sort of building. It just means that that structure has to comply with those regulations that have been adopted by the board.
and also, so these maps that are going out that, or actually the letters, I guess, more so, is that it said that, a portion of your property might be in this area or is defined in that area. Have we taken a look to see the number of people that actual structures are going to be a problem as opposed to just, you might have a puddle in your backyard?
With the new maps, I think we mapped out about 24, 25 structures, as in there were homes or whatever structure it may have been that was included. And with the new maps, now they're excluded from the floodplain. But we've mapped in, I think, about the same or a little less new structures that have moved from outside the boundaries to inside. So there's a small margin, but
So have those people been notified that their structure is now in this floodplain?
not directly, no. Well, I mean, I say that they've received a letter informing them that there are changes to the mapping on their property, and they should investigate and see how it does affect them. You know, like I said, if they own the house, there's nothing to do. If they are moving from out to in, they'll be notified by their mortgage company if they hold a mortgage. So there's lots of variables in there that we can't really weigh in on and tell them exactly what would happen due to that because of the private contracts and things like that. That's why this is an informational piece.
Is there any way that we can notify the people that have a structure that we've identified in that current floodplain?
We can. We certainly can.
I think that would be probably alleviate a lot of the tension that people are feeling is to know that, you know, it's only 25 structures that we're talking about,
Right.
even though hundreds of letters went out.
Mhm.
You know, it might be a better way of handling those individually. Just number one, to
Yeah.
let them know.
Well, I'm glad, you know, even with all the feedback, I'm glad we sent this out to everyone because I'd say 90% of the questions we're getting is people didn't know maps were updated in 15. You know, they haven't had a plat done, they haven't moved, but the flood boundaries have changed since the time they've owned their home, and they had no idea. So I think we are making a positive impact that way, getting those up to date with where that new boundary is that came in effect in 15, as well as what's going to be changing this following year.
And then I have one last question. What happens if, okay, your house is paid and cleared and all of this, but you sell your property or you divide your property? Then what happens? How is that affected?
It depends on what the new owner would come in, whether they buy it outright or go through a mortgage company. If it's in the floodplain, it's in the floodplain regardless. You know, if they were to sell it, that new owner, they'd have to figure that out, whether they want to take that risk of buying a property in the floodplain.
Okay.
As far as the plat goes, subdivision, they have to show the boundaries. That's a requirement on the plat to show where that 100-year floodplain boundary is, which would be shown on any plat that goes to the county for approval.
And so they have until when to do comments and when is the deadline?
That hasn't been announced yet.
Okay.
FEMA has not put out those dates yet for that 90-day appeals period.
Okay.
And that'll be announced through our public hearing process. We'll have public hearings on that, and we'll announce it to the newspaper and dates
Okay.
and so forth when that does come up. It's slated to be this fall. With COVID, I don't know if they're pushing things back or not, but the reason we went out so early with these letters is to give people ample time if they did want to prepare any studies or appeals or comments, rather than just say, here's 90 days, you know, get us what you can. This gives them a much broader swath of time to get any details and things like that in order if they do want to challenge any of the maps FEMA provided.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Steers?
Yes, Ms. Page. Larry Dane was here giving us news from DEQ. You're here giving us news from FEMA. I mean, two big government agencies full of bureaucrats. They're appointed, not elected. If they were elected, they never get reelected. And what is the recourse the county has, the Board of Supervisors or property owners? What recourse do we have?
As far as complying with the ordinance or moving to these map updates, or just in general?
Just tell them to get out of my property.
You know, it's a regulation in place. handed out
Regulation,
from
more regulation,
the federal
more
to the state to
restriction.
the locality. Yes, sir.
Choke us to death. More than a mask.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for being here and presenting to us today.
Thank you.
And you're going to follow up. We'll do public hearing. We'll do announcements in the paper for deadlines.
Yes, and that is slated for this fall, but those dates have not been announced yet.
Thank
Once
you.
FEMA lets us know, we'll get those out to the public.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Next we will have updates on action taken by Planning Commission at our July 20th, 2020 meeting. And that is with Ms. Ledoux.
I have copies of, I've got copies of the staff reports that are gonna be coming before you all at the board meeting on these two cases. I don't know if you wanted me to hand them out, now, ahead of time, or I'm here to just update you or answer questions on what happened. Okay. We had a 3-hour planning commission meeting last week, and there were 2 conditional use permits on the agenda. The first one was Mr. Daniels' project on Route 60. It's a use permit for both a retail establishment greater than 30,000 square feet and for a mini storage facility. The planning commission debated some conditions for about 90 minutes, but at the end voted 7-3 to forward y'all a recommendation of approval with the 10 draft conditions that are in the memo and the paperwork. And then the other use permit was for a commercial kennel operation up on Stage Road, kind of across the street from Mountain Laurel Grove on Mr. Moody's property. He did a subdivision there. It's 15 acres, and Mr. Brandon Johnson wants to buy the northern property for his commercial kennel business, and then once it gets established, he's planning on buying the southern property, or buying them both together, I'm not sure, to build his house, to build a permanent structure. So in A1, you need to have a use permit for a kennel operation. They debated a few conditions. The Planning Commission made a few recommendations for changes, and they voted unanimously to forward favorable recommendation to the board. That's what happened.
Thank you. Any questions? And both of these will come to the board August meeting through public hearing?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. No problem.
One thing, I know that we have item 6 on the agenda. It has been decided to remove that from our agenda to possibly our next meeting or further date. Item 8 is the approval of the Randolph-Macon College Rookie of the Year proclamation. And with that proclamation, it is for one of New Kent County's own. And it is from a young lady. And the proclamation reads that it's for Jacqueline Yvette Clarice Josephs, and she is attending Randolph-Macon College and was selected as Rookie of the Year. Ms. Clary will be here at our August meeting. The importance of this is she's indeed a student, a graduate of New Kent High School. She also was one of the students that sit on the New Kent County Clean Committee and a volunteer in the county. She and her family will be here in August, as I stated before. And the importance is to stress to our youth that we are indeed in support of them and everything that they do. And so we are very fortunate here in New Kent that we support our youth, and I think that's important for them as they conquer their endeavors. I will tell you that Miss Clary Joseph made quite an impact when she was at New Kent High School, and that led on to Randolph-Macon's cross-country and track and field program, where since she has been there, she has already set 5 new school records. Why somebody would run without you chasing them or not being in the military, I don't know. But she did set records for cross-country distances of 5K and 6K, and also indoor records for 3,000 meter, 5,000 meter, and the distant Melanie relay. So again, we will celebrate her at our August meeting. And with that, we have other business. Mr. Hathaway?
Ms. Page, I believe we do need a vote for the proclamation.
Okay.
So that we can sign that and present that at our next meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Ms. Vargas, will you poll the board, please?
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Steers? Aye. Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Ms. Page?
Aye. Thank you.
Okay.
Now we're ready for other business.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, I do have 2 items under other business. First is a recent email that I received from Mr. Bill Dole. who is a finance director with Rappahannock Community College. The lease that we currently have with RCC at the building next door was a 5-year lease that expires at the end of this month. Well, the lease doesn't expire. The original term of the lease expires, and then there's 2 additional 5-year terms that can follow. Mr. Doyle has asked, well, number one, has expressed the appreciation of New Kent County working with RCC for the facility, and has expressed to us that they would like to utilize the option of the additional 5 years as far as leasing that facility. They have also asked that the county waive their annual rent lease payment for this year. The reason being is the COVID-19 pandemic and the uncertainties relating to enrollment for this semester and the next semester. I think it's a reasonable request. There are certainly a lot of unknowns with COVID-19, and how that affects their registration appears to be unknown to them at this time. So if the board agrees to waiving their lease payment for this year, which I believe is due August 1st, we will draft, I believe we need to draft a resolution stating that we will move forward with utilizing the 5-year option, and that we would waive the lease payment for this year, and that would be on your August meeting agenda.
Any questions of Mr. Hathaway?
Annual lease payment of $67,000.
Okay.
Okay. And again, no action is needed today. It's a heads up that will be on your agenda for the August meeting. The other item that I got last night, actually, and the email came in yesterday evening, I was notified by the state that we will receive round 2 of our CARES Act funding. And I have paperwork for Mrs. Page to sign today, and we're going to get our paperwork in by the end of this week. I believe there's a survey that we also need to complete. We will be entitled to another $2,014,601, the same amount that we received on June 1st. So that's good news that we'll have additional funding available to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Just as we did at the last time, we are going to assemble an advisory team, a staff team, to put together an expenditure plan, which we will come back before you and present that to you for approval. But just wanted you to be aware that we will be getting additional funding, and that paperwork will be going in by Friday. And that's all that I have.
Okay, thank you.
On that CARES Act money, is that something that we also need to spend before the end of the year? Or
Yes, it has to be spent by the end of December. They say December 30th. I believe there's 31 days in December, but December 30th is the date that they've given us.
And can we spend that money to establish a broadband authority?
We have to look at the guidelines.
With that question, I have to say this. I don't know if we could send it to establish a broadband authority, i.e., as we could spend it to have a study done for the feasibility and the cost of internet. And I'm going to say that because we don't have the information we know for establishing an authority. Okay.
Well,
So-
and I see our county attorney shaking his head, and I'm kind of doubtful that would be an allowable expense too, but we'll go back and look at the guidelines to see if there's a way we can do that.
But I think looking at the possibility, like Ms. Page said, of can we use that for a feasibility study or just the study of what it would take in New Kent, I think it would be time well spent to determine that.
Okay. definitely take a look.
Ms. Evelyn?
Is there a certain percentage, again, there's got to be PPE stuff, or you don't know that, you don't?
It doesn't have to be a certain percentage on PPE, but all expenditures has to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. We have to relate it to COVID-19. But there are a list of guidelines as far as what can be spent on personnel, costs, and things like that. There's a lot of guidelines on this, but I don't recall any percentage that had to be spent on PPE.
It was.
Can we also use some of that money to offset the lease that we're talking about?
You know, that's a possibility because
I don't think so.
well,
No, you can't. You can't use it for revenue replacement.
That's true.
And it's got to be an expense that's necessary expenditure as a result of COVID. They do say that in their guidance from the state that generally capital projects that have broad economic benefits are not permitted. So it's got to be PPE, direct cost of law enforcement, emergency response. Those are the typical ones. And then, of course, they do break out the grants to local businesses
Absolutely.
that you can make. That's the limited guidance they've given out so far. But revenue replacement is specifically not an option.
Did you have something to say? Okay. Mr. Hathaway?
yes.
I know you got one more thing, don't you?
No, that's it.
What? Okay. So under other business, I have something. At our last meeting, we were celebrating and congratulating those that helped to resolve the issues with the Problems Forge Volunteer Rescue Squad, and we gave all kind of congratulations to Mr. Steers and to the charter members and previous members on that board. However, we failed to mention someone that worked also very hard, even through his retirement he did to make this possible as well. So today, we want to acknowledge our former Commonwealth Attorney, Linwood Gregory, for doing his due diligence and his dedication and commitment to seeing this issue through till it was finalized. So again, we thank Commonwealth Attorney Linwood Gregory for that. And in our efforts to stay safe, we ask that throughout the community that we just be kind. Just be kind. We have to get through this, but we have to get through this New Kent strong, and we have to get through this together. So the realization, I know everybody has bright ideas and experts on everything that's going on right now in the world. However, be kind to those of us that don't have that expertise. And finally, today, I have to recognize a member of our New Kent County Schools Education Foundation that has graced us today and brightened up our boardroom, and that's Ms. Carrie Evelyn. We thank you for being here. We also congratulate you and Supervisor Evelyn for your anniversary. And we thank you for all you do in keeping him calm in 5 years. I don't know how many ink pens I have not seen broken up here. And I know it's only because of your efforts that we don't have a stock pot in the back of them. So we congratulate you and wish you a very happy anniversary. It is our desire that everybody will remain safe. And if there are no other comments, Mr. Tiller.
I do. Going back to item number 6 on the political signage, could we expand that possibly to include the banner signs that businesses seem to leave out until they're so faded you can't read them?
One of the reasons that we didn't talk about this today is because our expert in law is here. And so he's going to work on reviewing our ordinances and getting us language that will not only be directed to political signage, but signage in the county.
Okay.
Okay. And
Because I've had a
so,
lot of complaints in the Bottoms Bridge area in particular about the banner signs. And like I said, some of them have been up there saying, open for business. They've been up since they opened for business 6 months ago.
okay.
And they've faded so much now you can hardly read them. That and the small, I'm not picking on Domino's Pizza, but they put a lot of yard signs up along Route 60. Trying to limit them to the amount of time that they can be out, even if it's doing the odd months of the year, and then they're responsible to have them down the other months of the year, unless it's a grand opening.
Okay.
Something, I understand that a grand opening, they want to advertise for that. But the signs just stay up too long, and they start to look really messy
Absolutely.
and unsightly. So I would like
You
to
got that?
include that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Steers?
Yes, Madam Chair, my question is, the changing of the ordinance, does this pertain to commercial property only, or does it also include residential?
For signage?
Yes, ma'am.
That will be a question left up to our attorney, and we'll discuss that when he brings back the request that we have received. And also, we'll add that onto your list. Do you have an answer for that, sir?
No, I don't, Mr. Steers. I'll just say I'll get with staff and work with them on what they proposed. I don't have an answer to you as to whether this will affect commercial or residential now. Nothing's been really proposed to me in that regard, but I'll work with staff.
I think that's two different matters. One is commercial, one's residential.
Yeah, understood.
I think that was the issue with, that's why I was kind of taken off the agenda as one rule fit all, is was my understanding, why they pushed it off. Because I agree with you, Mr. Steers, that's two different issues that need to be looked into, and I think that's what we paid Brendan to do. So you're going to look into it, right?
Ed, please don't forget about
Yes, sir.
people's personal property rights.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. So,
Madam Chair?
is this about these signs?
No, not about signs.
Okay.
I'd just like to piggyback on your "be kind" statement. The Proclaiming Grace Outreach is celebrating their Jenna Bash, which is their largest fundraiser and community festival event. Unfortunately, they won't be having it, so they've always done it or recently done it at Rockahawk, open to the public, and hundreds of people come out and have a great day. Because of the current environment we live in these days, they are going to be holding what they're calling the Jenna Bash Telethon. So it'll be kind of a replacement online on their Facebook page from 11 to 3. It'll be a live event. They will have live music. They will be, in place of their silent auction, selling items similar to what they did with the Spot On that they were doing. And they will also have food for sale in their parking lot in Barhamsville. A drive-through, you can pre-order through their website, or you can pay and order on-site. And that'll be this Saturday from 11 to 3. And they're going to have all kinds of folks presenting items. And I've been asked to extend an invitation to the rest of the board members. If you'd like to present an item, or you'd just like to come by and make a statement, you're more than welcome. Just let me know and we'll get you on the schedule. So it is a Be Kind event, because they definitely help the most in need in our community with food, home repairs, auto repairs. They do a couple scholarships, and they also support the Humane Society. So I think it is definitely a Be Kind event. And one last thing, I'll be quick. I definitely want to recognize our sheriff for the parade that was put on for Otis Timberlake this last Saturday for his 95th birthday. He is a World War II survivor, POW, World War II survivor, and he had an amazing day with people from across New Kent coming by for that parade, the fire trucks, the state troopers, the sheriff's department, and a number of people from the community just drive by waving to him. His daughter said he went to bed with a smile that night, and I think that was definitely in the Be Kind category. So Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. All hearts and minds are clear. Can we have a motion for adjournment? Okay, and next regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Supervisors will be held at 6:00 p.m. on Monday, August 10th, 2020, in the boardroom in New Kent County Administration Building. There will be no August work session. Ted, we thank you and your interns for joining us today. And Ms. Watkins, will you poll the board, please?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Steers? Mr. Lockwood?
All right.
Mr. Evelyn? And Ms. Page?
Aye. Meeting